Boker Tov or good morning. Yeah. This time you're going to hear my broken English as the keynote speaker, but at the end of my session I'm going to say a few words in Hebrew because I've got something very important to tell you and I don't want the English speakers to understand. So I think that's my first in-person conference since COVID-19 started. So it's cool and nice to see a lot of you here. The title for my talk is Practices for Angular Developers, the 21st Century Version. Woo! I don't know. Whatever. And for this talk, I've got a message. I prepared this talk not to be super technical, but I want to share with you my perspective, working with Angular for almost 11 years. And if there's one thing that I would like you to take from my talk, from this talk, is this message, guys. There are no bad practices. Now I've got something like 30 minutes, 35 minutes, so I'll try to convince you, or you know what, not to convince you, to show you and try to open your mind, all right? So open your mind. And today we're going to rethink Angular. Yeah. That's me. 20 kilo less, but that's me. That's my picture. You can visit my small website if you like, I don't know, if you like titles. I've got a bunch of them. You can find them there. I'm leading the front-end guild at Next Insurance. We are proud to support, be part of the sponsors in this conference. So come over, say hi, and we've got some cool surprises for you, and of course, beer. Yeah. So, like I already told you, I'm in a long-time relationship with Angular, started in 2010, which means that I think 11 years I've been working with Angular since AngularJS, like on a daily basis, as a developer, consultant, trainer, you name it. So after 10 years, after a decade, I think I've got my own opinions, and that's what I'm here to share with you. So the Angular framework, I think the advantage of Angular is its biggest weakness, because we want to keep things simple, and Angular is like built for the enterprise. I think that each one of you already associate Angular with enterprise complicated applications. I would like to share with you, who's familiar with Ruby on Rails? Who heard about it? A very popular framework. And this is a quote from their docs. Ruby on Rails is a framework that's based on conventions. The base assumption is that we are not special and we are not unique. And I've been working with hundreds of projects during these years, and I can tell you that basically all of us building pretty much the same thing. But Angular is not built upon conventions. Every time today, when you start an Angular project, you're probably selecting some defaults. We can argue about it, but it's NX monorepo because it's a very advanced workspace, and NGRX, and you know, we're going to start a fresh new Angular project and we're going to bring everything in. Why? Because our system going to be complex in the future. So let's do how we say it in Hebrew. I don't know how to translate it to English. Achana lemazgam. A preparation for air conditioning. Now I want to show you something, all right? Based on a true story. Anyone here ever actually read the style guide on the website? No, yeah? 5 people? So on the website there is a style guide, and one of the best practices is never do like aliasing input and output. If you're not sure exactly what it is, here it is. This is the Angular website. Read the docs. It's going to solve you a lot of problems. And they say like this is a very bad practice. And they've got like a very good like reason. for this. You've got an input, you've got an output, don't rename it, all right? That's not cool. But if you look closely, you'll find this in the Angular source code. So wait a second. You tell us that this is a very bad practice. You shouldn't do it. It's part of the style guide. You've got, like, you convinced me, but you're doing it because it makes sense. So what I'm trying to say, and that's the first message before we jump into the actual practices, is, you know, best practices, bad practices. Now, I think today there are no bad and best practices. There are like trade-offs, choices you make based on, and you know, based on knowledge. Cool? That's the dirty secret of Angular source code. I found at least 5 bad practices that they written on the style guide that they're actually using, doing the other things, all right? So, all right, let's get started. Very, very, very important talk. Who've seen this YouTube talk? Not too many people. Watch it. I'm going to share the slide with you. This is the introduction of React, all right? 2015, I think. But in this talk, this guy is challenging everything we knew about building single-page applications. Specifically, the MVC, MVVM style architecture. And introduce React and React solution for this. It evolved to React and Flux, and it affects Angular as well and the whole front-end scene. Since then, if I say the word, the dirty word, MVC, MVVM, I'm not cool anymore. Because come on, it's component architecture, it's the store Redux, push, blah, blah, blah. And what I like to tell you guys is that these design patterns are useful and relevant and being used today in other frameworks, in other technologies. I think Android still using the MVP, the model view presenter pattern. So just because we've got component and we introduced Redux and you know all this buzzing around, doesn't mean that we should forget some basic core design patterns that might solve our problem. So, you know, some classic slide. I used to show these slides when I used to teach AngularJS back in 2011. So that's my first practice. And my first practice is challenge yourself. This is a demo project that I prepared for you just to show you that if you do choose to implement a classic design pattern like the MVVM, nothing bad will happen. It doesn't mean that just because today it's very popular to build Angular around libraries and lazy loaded feature modules that all connect to the store, it doesn't mean that we can't build something which is, you know what, for my opinion, is simple, and for most use cases, that's probably the design pattern that I'm going to choose. And today, at Next, at one of our complex system, we rewrite implementing the MVVM design pattern with Angular. And that's cool. We're going to come back to this in a second, all right? So my first practice is don't forget about important, classic, useful UI design patterns that it's been there for a while, it's battle-proof, and it doesn't mean that just because you're using Angular, you should forget about them. Less ng modules. The most popular question, and I've been in this. I mean, how many types of modules do you know? Like, we've got the shared module, the app module, the routing module, the feature module, and in the community, we always talk about it. Hey, what do you think is considered to be the best practice? And I've been there myself. I help people to understand how to construct their Angular application around Angular modules, a bunch of Angular modules, and manage dependencies. But what would happen if we use just one module? Get off the stage. What will happen if, you know, we'll challenge ourselves? We're going to have one entry point, and you know what? I'm going to do something even more radical. A simple entry point for my whole app, and I even going to write my app component inline above the ng module that contain just a router outlet because that's all I need, and everything going to be part of this module. So yeah, bundle size. All right. Most cases, you know, excuse me, share module. Maybe. My message to you guys is this. I think the practice that we should practice today, start with few modules. Don't be radical. Don't build your entire app on top of one Angular module. Use less modules because it's easier to add Angular modules. It's harder to reduce it. So if you, by default, generating modules, I think most of you already know it. You started to get lost, and eventually, every module is loading the other module, and you've got like a whole bunch of Angular modules. And guess what? Guess what? Yeah, you already heard the rumor that Angular 13, we're going to get rid of the modules are going to be optional. So even the Angular team understand that we should think a little bit different about this thing. So less modules and less Zone.js. Because Zone.js is the source of all evil. And we should look around. We should look around at other solutions, like this popular library. You might heard about it. It's called React. And it doesn't really matter that there are other frameworks that are doing the same trick. In React, this is a snippet. If you never saw a React code, this is how a component look like. But the most important line is the function add. You see, React won't trigger any change detection cycle unless you change the value. But Angular, let's do something nice. Let's go to my playground component. And let me ask you this. If I create a button, let's implement do check. Just so we can do, oh, all right. Yep. Because I'm trying to. Yeah. Let's do a console log, checked. This is how you write checked in Swedish. This is my second language. Sorry. Let me switch back to plain English. All right. And here's our app. And here's the console log. And a bunch of errors because, yeah, the app module is not doing anything important. I just did this, which is very bad. Don't do it. Never. All right. And I go to the playground. Here's my playground. And here's checked. You can see it here. And if you create a button like this click, and you implement a no function that's not going to do anything, change detection is going to trigger? Yes, of course. Why? Because change detection in Angular is event-driven. And if we're going to do something like this, if we come here and do this implement on init, and, oh, come on, because I'm using this, yeah. Shh. All right, you want to do it like this? No problem. Let's take the hard way. Come on, all right, here you go. ng on init. If we do a set timeout, what's going to happen? Set timeout that doesn't do anything. Change detection going to trigger? Yes. And if we do an HTTP request that doesn't do anything, change detection going to trigger? Yes. So my practice, if you're starting a project from zero, from scratch, nope, no ng zone. But I want to be practical. I don't want to be radical. All right. So if you're not familiar with the following techniques, you can include a file called zone flags, and you can just disable timers, for example. So you can fine-tune Zone.js and say, all right, that's fine. I like Zone.js to trigger when I clicked, when I've got, I don't know, some kind of events, different events, request animation frame, maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter, but you can fine-tune Zone.js to ignore specific events. and take control. So if you've got a set timeout, but you don't want to run change detection, switch it off. So my practice would be, start with no Zone.js if you can. But if you want to get practical, you already got a system up and running, fine-tune Zone.js. Get familiar with this feature, zone flags, and just make sure that you know exactly which events are going to trigger Zone.js. So the practice is less Zone.js, all right? Modular Angular. Sometimes we forget that Angular is modular, which means it's built from different modules. And it's okay to replace these modules with something else. Just because we've got HTTP client, for example, doesn't mean that we can't do something like this. And use fetch. And use promises. There's nothing wrong with promises. Because we've got RxJS and reactive programming is amazing, it doesn't completely automatically means that promises are bad and we shouldn't use them anymore. Promises, the feature is built in JavaScript. It's got less complicated syntax maybe because reactive programming is hard. What I'm trying to say, guys, it's okay to use promises, and to convince you, most of the important features in Angular work with promises. This is a snippet from the source code of a validator which support promise or observable, so you can choose. This is the async pipe. The async pipes support promises. That's fine. If you decided to use a promise, async pipe gonna work. That's not an issue. It's not deprecated. This is the can activated. This is the router guard. It works with promises. So it's important to us to remember that, first of all, there is nothing wrong with promises just because we've got RxJS. RxJS, it's an amazing, powerful tool. You don't have to use it everywhere. So use it where you need it. And if you choose not to use it, you can still build reactive UI using promises if you find it more simple to use and suitable for the use case. You won't lose too much of Angular. Cool, guys? Promises are not your enemy. And the last one that's gonna summarize the... How much time do I get? I don't have any timer. No one knows? 5 minutes? 10 minutes. DOM manipulation, my favorite bad practice. Never manipulate the DOM. You learn Angular, that's the first thing you learn. DOM manipulation is bad, 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 bad. Don't do it. If you want to manipulate the DOM directly, use the renderer, use Angular API, use whatever. But that's nice to say. In reality, we have to manipulate the DOM. The most popular libraries manipulate the DOM directly, PrimeNG, the CDK. The renderer API is limited. And yeah, we are talking about practices, best practices, bad practices. So if you are going to manipulate the DOM directly, you're going to be coupled to the DOM. In all of my years as an Angular developer, I can tell you that 98% of the Angular apps that I had the opportunity to be involved in run in the browser. That's a web app. It's run in the browser. Once you import a third-party library, you're coupled to the DOM, period. All right, how many of you wrote an Angular app the exact same code and used native script or universal? How many people? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Super cool. Did you had some DOM manipulation? Probably. How did you deal with it? You wrap it in extra layers, but let's do something fun and let this talk get to its end. I'm going to build a directive, and I'm going to build a directive by the book, all right? I don't know which book, but it's going to be some book. So it's going to be, I'm going to create an element that I'm going to save a reference to. I'm going to save a reference to a parent. I'm going to save a reference to the window. Now, yeah, I know I can wrap the window and inject it from outside but let's not deal with it for now. Because I'm going to do some serious DOM manipulation and I want to use Angular, so I'm going to inject the element ref, because that's the way you do it. And now I think I can do, yeah, element ref. And I'm going to inject his friend, R, which is going to be renderer, ren with capital R. Renderer 2, because 2 is always better than 1. Most of the time. In the constructor, this is a directive, yeah? I'm going to save the element, going to be element ref, native element. We don't want to manipulate them directly, so we're going through the element ref. The parent, I'm going to use the renderer. And I'm going to check for the parent node. I'm going to pass this element, because it's a native element. And I'm going to implement 2 methods. What I want from it can be read-only. All right, so what? I'm going to do show, or like open, and then hide. And here it's going to be 2 lines of code. This window going to be a window, open, and we're going to just open a new window quickly. So it's going to look like this, width, let's do a width 256, height 256, cool. So this window is a window, now it's telling me it can be null, blah, 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 and all of this TypeScript that we like. And eventually this renderer, this R, we're going to do a append child, and we're going to append to this window. We're going to append this element. If you're familiar with Angular enough, you know where I'm going with this. Eventually, when you hide, it's going to be append child, but this is going to be this parent and this element, and this window we're going to close, and that's it. So this is a very interesting directive, this window, all right? Very interesting directive. I called it portable, and I export it as portal. And if I hit my playground, we're going to use it. There is a very nice counter here, you see? Just to show you change detection works. And on this div, I'm going to use my directive, portable. I'm going to save a reference for it, portal equals portal, because I want to call these methods from here. So let me just create 2 buttons quickly, open, and this is going to be return. And here I'm just going to call this portal directly, portal.open and portal.hide. Let's see what we've got. So this is my counter. I'm going to do an open. I'm going to send it to a new window. Parent append child is not a function. Of course, live coding. Parent append child is not a function. Do you see it somewhere? Parent append child. Where is it? Which line? Which line? 22, thank you. 22. Append child. This window, document, body. Yeah. Who said it? I've got a job offer for you. We need people like you in our team. All right. So let's do open. Now we opened it up in a completely different window. All right. Add still works. Change detection still works. And we're going to return it, and it's still keeping the state. So I just manipulate the DOM in a very brutal way. I destroyed it completely. All right? The reason that I did it is because I know that there are 2 kind of trees in Angular, the logical tree and the renderer view. And the logical tree stay intact, and I didn't broke the logical tree. I just manipulate the renderer tree. It's too short, but it's going to be, if you want to learn more, there is a meetup coming up with a workshop on this one. But this is not enough, because you can say, well, this demonstration is cool. You just show us how you created a fresh new DOM, and Angular still works. But we're talking about direct DOM manipulation. So what's going to happen if we're going to do old school? We're going to do an ID card. We're going to go to the portal. And you know what? There is no Angular. Let's take this and just remove any sign of Angular. Here, instead of this, I'm going to do document. Who remembers? Document get element by by ID. Yeah, we're going to do a card. All right. I'm going to ignore the typing now because I'm short in time and I want to make a point and push to production. Yeah. The parent going to be this element. Solve all the problem. A parent. All right. And we don't need all of this. We're going to do a vanilla, the worst, like the bad practice ever. Append child. And yeah. If you see any Angular here, let me know. Yeah, we're done. This parent, append child, and this element. So what the point that I'm trying to prove is if I'm going to skip Angular API, am I going to break everything like they promised? If you do direct DOM manipulation, bad things are going to happen. Let's give it a try. Counter still works. Completely new DOM still works. So change detection intact. Angular still in control. I've got the state management. I can return it here almost. But that's because of me. Undefined of reading append child. Cannot read properties of undefined. In line 20, we can fix it quickly. This parent, append child of this element. And what he wants from me? Here? Thank you. All right? And Angular still works and everything intact. Now, what I'm trying to say is this. We have to manipulate the DOM directly. Everyone does it, even Angular Material and Prime in G. It's okay if you know how Angular works, and once you understand that you can directly manipulate the DOM because you're building a web app, and that's fine. It's going to run on the web. All right, don't start with me. And so you can do basically whatever you want. Let's summarize. It's easy to add complexity. It's hard to reduce it. Practices for Angular developer 21st century. Start simple. Few modules as possible. No Zone.js or shut it down with flags. Start with promises if you don't have to, or there is no advantage, or your screens are pretty much simple. Consider to implement a known design pattern like MVC or MVVM. This is not a bad thing, all right? Start simple, use as much Angular as you need because Angular is modular, it's built for it, but we lost it, all of us, me too, all right? We lost it. Every Angular project now is micro frontends on top of mono repos with NGRX that lazy load libraries into feature modules that transport themselves into bundle size which are cool things, yeah, but not all of us build the enterprise, and even the enterprise doesn't have to be complex. There are no bad practices. Guys, challenge, questions, don't believe anyone. Don't believe me, always question. I'm done, but before I get off the stage, I want to say a few words in Hebrew. שלום לכולם, סתם. זהו, שבמרץ 22, 2020 התפרצה הקורונה, ואני כמישהו שמאוד מאוד אוהב להסתובב בקהילה ולדבר, הסתגרתי בבית שלי ועוד הייתי בארצות הברית, והתחברתי אליכם מחדש, עם סתם לשבת כל יום ראשון ולעשות קצת אנגולר. זה נגמר באיזה 50 שעות ביוטיוב עם הרבה מאוד אהבה ממכם. זה עזר לי מאוד, ואני רוצה להגיד לכם דבר אחד. אני עושה את הדברים האלה ואת המיטאפים ומשתף את הידע נטו כי אני אוהב, ונטו בגללכם. ויש אנשים שלפעמים אומרים, ניר, כל הכבוד לך, אתה קומיוניטי לידר, אבל השנה הזאת גרמה לי להבין משהו מאוד מאוד חשוב. אני לא לידר של שום דבר. בזכות אנשים נהדרים שיש פה, זה נותן לי את החשק ואת הכיף להמשיך, לשתף ולתת את מה שאני יודע, אז תודה לכם. זה אמיתי לגמרי. If you like to argue with me about anything that you just seen, all these bad practices, if you want to come to my booth and tell me, no, you are more than welcome. That's it. This is my opinion. 11 years with Angular, some conclusions, and I've got some whiskey for you. Enjoy this conference. Thank you again. And that's it. Yeah.